Hi, Peggy.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
How does Anna feel? How does Anna feel?
Well, still a bit
Busy.
drowsy.
Yeah, yeah,
It'll get better.
yeah.
I was reading the news. Neil Sedaka passed away yesterday. Remember Neil Sedaka?
What?
You remember Neil Sedaka?
Yeah.
He passed away yesterday.
Oh.
86.
Didn't he live in Canada?
No, here. He was born in Canada.
Oh, but he lived here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
Wow. Yeah.
it
We
happened.
loved his music.
Yeah.
We loved his music. Yeah.
I even went to see him when he came to Uruguay.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And
Yeah.
probably was in just before we left in 1970, 71.
Mm. Yeah.
Abe,
Yes, sir.
one of your compatriots died yesterday, famous singer.
I know. He was one of the classics.
Yeah. Hello, Walter.
Good
Hello.
evening. Hello.
Shabbat tov.
Shavua Tov. Shavua Tov.
What up?
שיהיה בשורות טובות.
Very good, B'Sarat.
Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov, everybody.
Magda and Harold, welcome back.
You muted, Harold.
And frozen.
Okay, there you go.
Mm.
Okay.
Welcome back.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
very much.
Has anybody ever learned Ezra before?
No.
No.
Has anybody got any updates on what's going on, or we just in the same status quo?
Susie, how are your children?
I haven't talked to them. I just saw their, the family texts, the family WhatsApp from before, but everybody's okay. But it's very sad that a building was hit in Tel Aviv.
Right.
And I know that from the shrapnel, Dahlia put on our group that somebody's house was really injured, just even from shrapnel can really.
Wow.
Good.
But I don't, it's amazing that they can keep on sending over these missiles, these rockets.
No.
Yeah, we basically in Dubai, that palm, we were
Oh
there.
my God. That's
But
a
In
they
that hotel?
Lord.
Magnificent.
hit Qatar also, it's crazy.
What happened in Dubai? What happened?
They
hit this beautiful resort.
They threw missiles at Dubai as well.
The CIA headquarters in Dubai were bombed.
Oh,
Or why it hit the hotel. I don't know. This island or something. We were there. Wow.
But maybe the other countries now will realize that they're not
Not to mess around.
they're not
Yeah.
safe.
You hear what Mamdani and
No, what they say.
what do you mean? They said, oh, they shouldn't have attacked them and blah, blah. I'm telling you, they Iranian
Nonsense.
spies. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's more than that.
Yeah. Okay.
What's that, Mamzadani?
Yeah.
Mamzadani. Okay.
All right. Chapter 1.
Okay. Well, today
here's a big
is going to be an introduction. In fact, it may last more than today, but I want to. It's important to so we know where Sefer Ezra is taking place, because remember, we finished Malachim Beis. Malachim Beis dealt with Tzidkiyahu, the last king of Judea, being taken prisoner to Bavel, and the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. And then we learned Sefer Daniel, which described to us what happened with Nebuchadnezzar and Daniel, and who came after Nebuchadnezzar. And we're going to have to remind ourselves of that chronology. Who came after Nebuchadnezzar, who came after that. And then we had Sefer Esther, because Achashverosh follows the Babylonians. The Persians took over from the Medes, from Darius the Mede. And already in the time of Koresh, who was before Achashverosh, so he let Klal Yisrael go back. And so we're going to remind ourselves about the 70 years. So I want to make sure that we understand, and that's why I sent a lot of material by the WhatsApp group. And you can reference, I'm going to be referencing all of that material that I sent you. But first, I want to discuss Sefer Ezra. Where does it fit in Tanakh? So the Gemara Baba Basra, Yud Daled Amud Beis. Tan Rabbanon, Sidran Shel Nevi'im. Chazal canonized Tanakh. There are Chaf Daled Sifrei Tanakh. So what is the order? So Yoshua, which we learned, Shoftim, Shmuel, Malachim. Then Yirmiyah, Yechezkel, Yeshaya, Shnei Masar, which is Trei Asar. No, the Gemara takes a tangent. Then it says Sidran Shel Ksuvim, Rus, Sefer Tehillim, Iyuv, Mishlei, Kohelet, Shir Hashirim, Keynote, which is Eicha, Daniel, Megillas Esther, Ezra, V'divrei Hayom. You notice,
Chagai Malachi?
well, Chagai Malachi is in Trei Asar.
Right.
Okay. You notice it doesn't say Nehemiah. It refers to it as Sefer Ezra. So it's after Esther and before Divrei Yomim in the Gemara. And in the subject matter we're going to see is the Aliyah from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael when they were allowed to go, and the beginning of the building of the Beis HaMikdash. In Sefer Ezra, we're going to learn about how and who caused to stop that binyan. Remember when we learned Sefer Esther, there was the 10 sons of Haman had been involved in stopping the binyan of Beis HaMikdash. And when we learned in Esther, v'chatzi, that ad chatzi malchut, when Achashverosh would ask Esther, what can I give you? And we said, ad chatzi malchut, to rebuild the Beis HaMikdash, that I can't give you. Then Ezra and Nehemiah teach Torah. They build a wall around Jerusalem. Many of the Jews who had come back and made Aliyah had married foreign wives. So there was a public divorce of them. They were sent away. And then there are a lot of takonos that Ezra and Nehemiah did. They were part of what we call the Anshe Knesset Agdola, which was a group of 120 Chachamim, amongst them Nevi'im, like Malachi. We're going to see, there's a debate who Malachi was. Some say it was Ezra himself. And the various sorrows that the Palestinians of that time, the Shomronim, and we had enemies that were attacking us all the time, and what we did about it. So you notice that as I said, the Gemara doesn't refer to the Sefer Nehemiah, it just refers to Sefer Ezra. Now, the Gemara in Sanhedrin Tzadik Gimel says that Hakol nichtav al yado, everything that is written, and a lot is written in Sefer Ezra as well, is written by Nehemiah. Afal pichein lo nikra sifra al shmo. And even the parts of Nehemiah that it was not called Nehemiah. The Chachamim explain in Sanhedrin Tzadik Gimel, Kol mila de Ezra Nehemiah ben Chachal yamrinu. All the words of Ezra and Nehemiah wrote. My time lo ikri sifra al shmei. Why wasn't at least his portion of the Sefer named Nehemiah? Amrav Yirmiyah Barava mipnei shehechzik toiv la'atzmo. He was haughty. Shenemar Zachra li Elohai Latova. Hashem remembered me for the good. He was too proud. Umaksha Gemara Harei David Omar. In Tehillim Kovav it says Zachreni Hashem beratzon imcha pagdeni b'shrasecha. So the Gemara answers David Rachmi Hudekavi. That's a tefillah. It's not referring to him. Rav Yosef Omar Shesiper bignusan shel rishonim. Shenemar va'apachot harishonim asher lefona yichbidu al ha'am v'yichu mehem belechem v'yayin achar kesef shkon. he sort of gave lashon hara about the earlier leaders that preceded him. The afal Daniel shaya gadol mimenu, including where those leaders were Daniel. So we see already interesting issue about Nehemiah. Says the Chidah. The Chidah was a great Sephardic rabbi in the 1700s, lived part of the time in Israel. Rabbi Gamliel haya Gilgul shel Nehemiah. The great Rabbi Gamliel, who was deposed as the Nasi, and the young man, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, that we're going to speak about at the Haggadah, Harei ani kiven shivim shana, he was 18 years old, and he grew a beard overnight, because he replaced Rabbi Gamliel so the Chidah says that Nehemiah was the Gilgal of Rabbi Gamliel. Umishum kach haviru min nisiyoso. It sort of was a punishment to Nehemiah. We said Nehemiah was haughty, so what happened to Rabbi Gamliel was sort of a tikkun to what Nehemiah did. Right? Bazen nitkan cheto shel Nehemiah, kosav achidah. Shelakach nizgagel mishamayim shebedorosenu nitfas sefer Nehemiah b'fnei atzmo kach nechul shmo. And in fact, it was at the time in Rabbi Gamliel that they began to call the sefer, that because the sefer Ezra was one sefer. It was at Rabbi Gamliel's time that they said that part that we're going to learn after Ezra is sefer Nehemiah. So, but really, it's one sefer. Today there are 10 prakim in Ezra and 13 prakim in Nehemiah. Now, eventually, when the printers, since Gutenberg, began printing Tanakhs, so they separated the two. But very interesting, Chazal in Masechta Sukkah, in Yerushalmi Chagiga, when they brought a pasuk that today we find in Sefer Nehemiah, they would say Be'ezra hu oimer. Chazal still referred to it as the Sefer Ezra. Later on, the way we have the printers and we have our Tanakhs, Sefer Nehemiah is a separate Sefer, but Chazal referred to it as one Sefer. The Radak and the Even HaEzer and Rashi says, Kisheviu posuk b'Nehemiah kasu b'Sefer Ezra. And therefore, when you count up the 24 books of Tanakh, Ezra and Nehemiah is really considered one sefer. Now, who wrote Sefer Ezra? So, Amru Chachamim in Baba Basra Tezvav, Ezra Kasav Sifro, the Yachash Shel Divrei Yomim Adlo, and he also wrote Sefer Divrei Yomim, up until him, because Divrei Yomim is a list of chronology and personages. So Chazal tell us up until Divrei Yomim, up until Ezra, was written by Ezra. The Gemara says Messiah Leila Rav. This supports Rav Dam Ravidam Rav. Lo Allah Ezra mi Bavel at sheyachas atzmo v'Allah. Uman aske Nehemiah ben Chachalia. Who wrote Sefer Ezra? The rest of it, Nehemiah. But, as we said, he lost the right to be called Sefer Nehemiah because of what we said about him being haughty. We're going to see in Sefer Ezra that the beginning of the Sefer is written in Hebrew. Daniel, in the 4th perek until the 6th perek, it's going to be in Aramaic. The Gemara in Sanhedrin Chafalov says as well, Tanya Rabbi Yossi Omer, Roy Haya Ezra Shetinasein Torah al Yado Yisrael. Ezra was so great that he was fit, the Torah should have been given instead of through Moshe Rabbeinu, through Ezra. Il Mole Kidmu Moshe. If it wasn't for Moshe Rabbeinu that came before him. But Moshe hu oimer u Moshe Allah Elokim. Be Ezra hu oimer hu Ezra Allah mi Bavel. So just like Moshe Allah went up to the Elokim, when it says Ezra went up from Bavel, ma ali amar kan Torah, af ali amar lahalan Torah. That's how Chazal learned. But Moshe hu omer, it says in Dvorim, va'osi tziva Hashem, I was commanded by Isahi lelamed etchem, to teach you chukim u'mishpatim. The Ezra, it says, Ezra Zion, ki Ezra hechin levavo lidrosh es Toras Hashem. Ezra prepared the hearts of the Jewish people to darshan Toras Hashem. V'lasos u'lamed b'Yisrael chok u'mishpat. So you see parallel language that was used with Moshe, similarly was used with Ezra. Even though the Torah wasn't given to him, the ksav that we have, I'm the Balkari for the group, so I see it every week. Our letters are biksav ashuri. And we'll go into this a little bit more. I'll send pictures of the two different. There was, prior to Ezra, the Hebrew script was written differently. If you look at coins that were found in 7th century BCE or 8th century BCE, you see the Hebrew is not the same Hebrew as we have. Under Ezra, we now have Aleph, Bet, Gimel, the way it looks in the Sefer Torah. And the Ksav was changed at the time of Ezra. And then in Masechta Sukkah, Tavchaf, Betchila kishnitach haTorah Yisrael, Allah Ezra mi Bavel v'Yasta. A lot of Torah was forgotten in the 70 years of Golus. And Ezra reestablished it when they came back to Eretz Yisrael. Yesh oimrim, Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcha Masechta Megillah, shezocha af lenevuah v'hu malachi. As I said, some people hold that Ezra was Malachi, the last Navi in Sefer Treyasar. In Pasuk Zion, it says, "V'hu sofer mahir b'Torat Moshe, asher nasan Hashem Elokei Yisrael." He was an expert sofer, like a scribe. LeEzra HaKohen HaSofer, Sofer Divrei Mitzvahs Hashem V'chukav Yisrael. What did he count? He counted the mitzvos. What does this mean? He was a baki in Torah, every letter, every digduk. And the Ramban explains in the Ramban's Hagdama to the Torah, Zeh ha'inyan she'eviu gdolei ha'mikra limnois kol mole v'kol choser. The great gedolim of the Mikra, they counted every time a word had to be written with a full mole or choser. I gave an example. I gave it Vartov Friday night. We talked about shtei luchos. So the word luchos can be spelled lamed vav chet vav taf. That's spelled, the word is spelled mole. But remember, dikduk in Hebrew, luchos can be written with just a cholam, a dot, and you can get rid of the next vav. So you could write it lamed vav chet taf. That's writing the word luchos choser. And we darshan things. So, for example, we said the two luchos, on one luchos are all the mitzvos ben adam lamakom. Keep Shabbos, don't worship idols. And then on the other luach is the mitzvos ben adam lechavero. Don't kill, don't commit adultery. But really, shtei luchos habrius is written chaser, implying that really it could have been written on one stone. So you understand the chachamim who wrote the Torah and the Masorah that was given, how to write the letters, and every letter was counted. Not just every word was counted. Every letter of every word was counted to either be mole or choser. That's why Ezra is called Hasofer, the counter. Right? We understand it that he's a scribe, but it's more than scribe. The Ramban continues. Ulechaber sforim b'masuros ad Edra Sofra Navi shishtadel b'zeh. כמו שכתוב בפסוק נחמיה, ויקראו בספר בתורת אלוקים מפורש, ושום שכל ויבינו במקרא. And the Gemara explains, מה דכתיב ויקראו בספר תורת אלוקים מפורש, ושום שכל ויבינו במקרא, ויקראו בספר תורת אלוקים זה מקרא. That's how the Torah is written. מפורש זה תרגום. That's the Aramaic translation. ושום שכל אלו הפסוקים. How do we divide up psukim into psukim? V'yavinu b'mikra elu piskei tamim. For example, the trop, how we lane it. Va'amri la elu amasoros, the Masorah, midrashas chazal zu nilmat shezra tikin and Masorah. The Masorah, this is learned b'Kava Chomer. This is learned b'Gzera Shava. V'yesh shekosfu, in the Maisa Ephod, shehu av tikin esanikud, how we read, for example, today we had a mitzvah saseh doraisa to read Parsha Zachor. Those that were in Yavna heard that I repeated one of the psukim. Why do we repeat it? Because there's a machlokes. Do we read it zecher with a tseirei or zecher with a segol? So the Maisa Ephod says that how we read each word, every nikud, was the takana was through Ezra Sofer and Tamei Amikra, the trope. When we as a Balkora Lane, this was all established by Ezra. Now, Ba'avos Rav Nosson, it says, Eser hamili manekudot shebesefer Torah. Again, I have the benefit of being a Balkore. In the Parsha of Nitzavim, it says, Hanistaros Lashem Elokeinu, V'haniglos lanu. So, V'haniglos lanu have dots on it. There are a number of psukim throughout the Torah that have nukudot above the word. The Avos Rav Nosson tells us there are 10 words throughout the Torah that have these dots. Kach Amar Ezra, Yavo Eliyahu, v'yomer libnei katafta kach Omer ani lekvar nikadati aleim. Means, so this was done through Nevuah by Ezra. In Moyed Cotton, it says, "Ein magiin ois achas afilu b'sefer Ezra." When you write a Sefer Torah, you have to write it looking at another Sefer Torah. You can't, and when you're correcting a Sefer Torah, you have to do it with another Sefer Torah. So what does it mean, afilu b'sefer Ezra? So Rashi says, the Perushah Rishon, shakavanah l'sefer Torah shekosov Ezra. There was a famous Sefer Torah that was written by Ezra. Bekama sfarim huskaram masoras amakom himatzo shel Sefer Torah shekosov Ezra. Throughout Shas, there are references to this Sefer Torah that there is a rumor that I learned as a student that the Rambam, one of the reasons he ended up in Egypt, because remember, what did they have in Egypt? The Geniza. And that he had access to the Sefer Torah of Ezra. Even the Darchei Moshe, the Ramah, mentions Maskir Sefer Torah, and that's why we have, or we believe we have such authentic Sefer Torah, that it could be that some of our Rishonim, remember the Rambam lived 1,000 years ago, so Our oldest Sefer Torah is the Aleppo Codex. It's from the year 1100. It was also, I think, found in the Geniza of Cairo. Remember, the Cairo Geniza was discovered in early 1900. And in there, they found millions of documents, old documents. And I don't know where the Aleppo Codex was found. Harold might look it up in the ChatGPT. But Aleppo Codex is the oldest Sefer Torah that we have extant. But the Rambam may have had a Sefer Torah from 1,000 years before him, which was this Sefer Torah of Ezra. And the Bartanura, who writes a Perush to Masechta Avot, to all Mishnayos, he traveled. And he testifies, the Bartanura lived, I don't know, 1500, 1600. And he testifies that in Mitzrayim was this Sefer Torah that Ezra wrote. Something we're going to learn carefully in Sefer Ezra, that when Olam Ibavel Eretz Yisrael v'imo chelek me'am, there were 41,000 Jews that came up with Ezra when they made Aliyah. That's all. There were millions of Jews in Babylonia. Only 41,000 came. Amru Chazal, Lo Allah Ezra mi Bavel ad shasa kesolus nekiya va'Allah. For some reason, we're going to learn about it as we learn Sefer Ezra. He took all the bad yichus out of Bavel. When he left and took the 41,000 with him, Bavel remained nekiya kesolus, like fine flour. Very good yichus. What does that mean? No mamzerim, no geirim. So all of the bad yichus went up with Ezra. Mishum she'el imot kol psulei achitun shebebavel. Kivin sharash chachmei ador oilim imo v'lo nishar chachamim bebavel abkim b'davar shishmu shlo yisarvu ba'am v'chashash yiskalkel yichus hamishpachos. He understood that a lot of chachamim decided to come along with Ezra. And he didn't leave a lot of chachamim in Bavel who were expert. So he had to be careful to only leave a wonderful yichus in Bavel. The Rambam writes, brachos elu shel kriyashma. Right? We have brachos of Yotzer Or and Ava Rabbah in the morning, and we have brachos by Ma'ariv. Imshar kol abrachos aruchos b'fi kol Yisrael. All other vabrachos, meaning Shmona Esrei, Birchos HaShachar, Ezra HaSoifer uBeis Dino Tiknum. It was Ezra who established it. Beis Dino shel Ezra Gadol Echad. Okay. Chazal in Baba Kama, Daf Pei Beis. Asora takonos tikein Ezra. 10 famous takonos Ezra Sofer was misakein. Let's see who can anticipate these. Koirin b'mincha b'Shabbos. When we just read Sefer Torah Mincha, that was Ezra. Koirin b'Sheni v'Chamishi. The fact that we read Torah Monday and Thursday, Ezra was misakein that. Donin b'Sheni v'Chamishi. In Europe, in the Vada Arba Harotzos, in the four lands, right? Galicia, there was a Jewish government for almost 300-400 years. So they followed this, that the Beis Din was open Monday and Thursday. And certainly in the time of Chazal. Mechabsim b'Chamishi b'Shabbos. He made a takana that your laundry should be done on Thursdays. Then oichlin shum be'erev Shabbos. They would eat garlic on Friday. Does anybody know the reason for that?
Mm-mm.
So garlic was known like as an aphrodisiac. Like we would think the opposite because
Stinks.
because of bad breath. But remember, the Talmidei Chachamim are urged that if they're going to have relations, it's Friday night, right? The Gemara has, truck drivers have relations at, certain times, and regular workers, and Talmidei Chachamim Friday night. So shum, and not just I would say aphrodisiac, but it helped fertility. Vav. Shetei isha mashkemes va'ofe. That women on Friday should wake up early and bake challah. And shetei isha chogeres besinar. This is like wearing a belt. It's for tznius. So there was a takana how she should dress. Shetei isha chofefes v'tovelas. That is, before a woman went to the mikveh, she has to scrub her scalp so that there's no problem with chatzitza. Tes, sheyu roichlin machzirin bayaros. Peddlers, primarily who sold makeup and perfume, he established the takana that they should be present and running around in cities. Now, what's this? Again, Ezra, you see, is very interested in women and men. He wanted to make sure that the women had access to perfumes and makeup to improve marital life. So you can see Ezra a little bit as a proto-feminist here. Yud, tikein tefillah lebale kriyan. That if a man has a seminally mission, so the takana was he had to go to the mikveh. This is before he learns Torah. This is since that takana has been abolished. Now you can see there are many chassidim who go to the mikveh every day. So they're machmir like this takana of Ezra. But the regular halacha is not like that anymore. We see other takonos that Ezra did. Masechta Megillah Lamed Aleph, Tanya Reb Shimon ben Elazar Omer. Ezra tiken lan liyisrael sheyukarin kloloi shebetoira kohanim kodem atzeres, v'shebemishna Torah kodem Rosh Hashanah. So in the cycle of laning, so Parshas Bechukosai has the tochacha. Now, many of you know that sometimes we in America are off the laning schedule in Israel. For example, let's say there's a 2-day yontif. That for us, Shabbos is a yontif, but in Eretz Yisrael, it's not a yontif. So they read the regular parsha. So we fall behind a week because we didn't read that parsha until next week. So we know many years, at a certain point, we are behind Eretz Yisrael by 1 week. That happens. However, no matter what, we will double up. Like, for example, why sometimes do we read double parsha, Matos Masei? We don't do it every year. And Achrei Mos Kedoshim. Some years we do it, some years we don't. The whole point is to make this takana work so that Bechukosai ends up being lain before Shavuos. Now, we don't lane it right before Shavuos. The parsha that's before Shavuos is always Parshas Bamidbar, because Shavuos is Rosh Hashanah li'ilonos. So before Rosh Hashanah, you don't want to read bad news before Rosh Hashanah. So there's always a break. So Tichla Shana V'Killo says that the previous year should end. The same thing by Rosh Hashanah. The parsha that's lain before Rosh Hashanah in Tishrei is always Parshas Nitzavim. Because Parshas Kisavo has to be lain because there's a tochacha. The klalos in Sefer Dvarim have to be lain before Rosh Hashanah. This is all a takana of Ezra. Then in Chulin, Konas Asalavim, Shinasin Meiser L'Kohanim V'lo Lahem. Minat Torah, we are supposed to give 1/10 of our assets to Leviim. The Kohanim only get Truma, which is you can pot to yourself 1/50th, that's Benoni. A generous person gives 1/40th. But in the times of Ezra, he wanted to punish the Levium. We'll see why. And he made a takana that all of the meiser that normally were given to the Levium should be given to the Kohanim instead. Harold, you would have had a good bank account then. Now, in Megillah's Tainis, it says that there was a fast day on the 9th of Teves. And in the tour and the Bahag say that on that day Ezra Sofer died. And we moved it, so we commemorate the Petira of Ezra Sofer on Asar B'Teves. That, well, of course, the main reason it's connected is because the siege around Yerushalayim was set up on Asar B'Teves. But in the Slichos of Asar B'Teves, it says, Zo'amti b'sisha bo b'klima v'chefer. I became angry on the 9th. Choshech me'alai mi'il hod v'tsefer. Tarav bo anoisen imrei shefer hu Ezra Sofer. So in the kinos, the slichos that we say on Asar B'Teves, we mention the death of Asar B'Teves. In another source, it says he actually died on Asar B'Teves. The Kaf HaChaim brings that he died on the Asar B'Teves. And they moved it up in the Masechta Tainis. They wanted to do it on the 9th because they didn't want it. Ezra's death was so important. They didn't want it mixed up with the other things that was fasting, like when they encircled the walls of Yerushalayim. So they moved it to the day before, so that it should be recognized that we're fasting because of the death of Ezra. Okay. So that's a little bit of what I wanted to say regarding background. Now, I want to give an overview of the Sefer. Well, before I do that, let's do the following. Yirmiyahu Navi, I'm going to remind everybody, Yirmiyahu Navi had written a pasuk, Ki cho amar Hashem, ki lefi mlos lebavel shivim shana, after 70 years of Babylon are completed, efkod etchem, I will remember you. V'akimoti alechem et divrei atov lashiv etchem lamakom hazeh. I will remember you, and I will restore you to this place. Now, Yirmiyahu Navi didn't clarify how these 70 years are going to be calculated. Now, I sent you dates if you take a look. So, Nebuchadnezzar became king of Babylonia 3320. And Yehoiakim HaMelech were overwhelmed at that time by the army of Nebuchadnezzar. 18 years later, in 3338, or 422 BCE, so the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, and the people were taken to Bavel. So do we calculate the 70 years from 18 years before, when Yehoiakim was already conquered by Nebuchadnezzar, or only after the destruction itself? So if you remember, in Daniel, we said, B'shana achat leDaryavish ben Achashverosh. This was a different Daryavish and a different Achashverosh, Darius the Mede. Ani Daniel binoti basfarim. Daniel, I try to think about this calculation. Mispar hashanim asher yadvar Hashem al Yirmiyahu Navi. These 70 years that Hashem spoke to Yirmiyahu, Lamalos lechovres Yerushalayim shivim shana. So Daniel, and we learned about this in Daniel, because what was happening was the 70 years from the fall of Yehoiakim. And this Daryavesh made no announcement that we're going to allow you to go back. So Daniel said, well, must be that the 70-year calculation is not from when Yehoiakim was conquered by Nebuchadnezzar, but rather a later period, like, for example, when the city is going to be destroyed, which is 18 years later. At that time, Daniel davened, and he prayed that the Binyan Beis HaMikdash should return. And remember, the Malach Gavriel told Daniel that there would be a beginning even after the 70 years of Yehoiakim. But the completion would only happen actually 70 years later. But the initial settlement of the city and the laying of the foundation would take place 70 years. That's when Koresh, right? Because let's just go back to Daniel. Vayish Gavriel vaydaber mila shiv livnot Yerushalayim ad Mashiach neged shivim shiva. So it's that at that time, which was 70 years after Nebuchadnezzar took Yehoiakim, right? He authorized the return, which was at 3393, which is 70 years after the Yehoiakim was destroyed, after Yehoiakim was taken prisoner. And he let them come back. And this is some of the drama that we're going to see as we read Sefer Ezra. I just wanted to remind everybody of that. So I think I sent this. Again, let me say like this. The Malchus Bavel ended when Belshazzar, who was the grandson of Nebuchadnezzar, the son of Evil Marduk, he brought the Kalim out, and there was the writing on the wall, which we learned. He was killed that night. And Darius the king, with his son-in-law Koresh, took possession. And that was the 70 years. Darius only lived for 1 year, and then Koresh took over. And Koresh and that was the 70th year after Nebuchadnezzar had become king. And he then allowed them to return to Eretz Yisrael. And that is exactly how Sefer Ezra starts. Uvishana achas leKoresh melech poros lechlos dvar Hashem ipi Yirmiyahu ha'ir Hashem. Right? That's the first pasuk of Sefer Ezra is going to be located right then, when Koresh gives them, which is now 70 years after when Yehoiakim had been conquered by Nebuchadnezzar, and he allowed Klal Yisrael to go back up. And who went? Zerubbabel and 9 Chachamim went with him, with 41,000 people. That all happens we're going to learn that in Perek Aleph and Perek Beis. And they started in Perek Gimel, they started building the Mizbeach, and they started being Makriv Korbanos. And we're going to learn the whole debate. Can you offer Korbanos without a bias? Maybe you only need a Mizbeach, and that relates to Bizman Hazeh. Can we bring Korbanos today even though we don't have a bias? We know the Makam HaMizbeach, because we know through pictures, we know exactly where it is. And they started bringing trees from the Lebanon. And they built the foundation of the Beis HaMikdash. But then in Perek Dalid, we're going to be told that the Kusim and the Shomronim, they wanted to participate in the building of the Beis HaMikdash. But the Chachamim pushed them away. Lo lachem velanu livnos beis Elokeinu, the famous, it's for us to build, not for you and us to build. And really, we're going to see they showed their true face, that they didn't really wanted to upset the building, to prevent the Beis HaMikdash to be building. And they wrote a letter to Koresh that they're building a wall and they want to rebel against you. These are called the Tzora Yehuda Binyamin, and it worked. And Koresh went back on his agreement to allow them to build the Beis HaMikdash. And this, they had the same influence on Achashverosh, who came after Koresh. Because the 10 sons of Haman had written letters as well with Vashti, who was the granddaughter of Nebuchadnezzar, to prevent the building of the Beis HaMikdash. And the Beis HaMikdash was stopped built until after Achashverosh dies. Esther and Achashverosh have a son called Daryavesh. And in the second year of his reign, he gave permission to rebuild it. When is that? That's 18 years later, after Koresh originally let them, which is now mamish 70 years after the Churban was actually destroyed. Then Perek Hey and Vav of Ezra is going to be the building of the Beis HaMikdash. There's Chagai, Malachim, Zachari, or Chagai and Zachari, the Nevi'im, they give permission through Nevuah to build it. Only then, in the last four, right? I said this is Perek Hey and Vav describe the building of the Beis HaMikdash. Only then, in the last four prakim, does Ezra make Aliyah to Eretz Yisrael with many other Jews. We'll see how many. And that's when Ezra appears on the scene. So we don't see Ezra at all for the first 6 prakim. I sent a little bit more detail with year by year, and you can see that in Hebrew, which describes Golus Bavel, Shivat Zion, Bayis Sheni. And so you can see the dates a little bit more clearly. Now, a little bit more introduction. I take this is Nosson Sherman always writes a beautiful introduction to everything everything he writes. There's always nice introductions. And he describes the following, that during this period of time in Klal Yisrael's history, there was doubt and despair. We know that Geula follows Galus, but the question is it going to really happen? They knew that we were kicked out of Eretz Yisrael. And maybe he doesn't want us back anymore. What's the point of kicking us out? Maybe that it's going to be permanent. He brings that, we haven't read Sefer Yechezkel, but a group of Zkanim came to Yechezkel and said, now that they've been driven by Hashem out of his land, we may no longer have an obligation to have allegiance to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's the same as a divorced woman expelled from the home of her husband have a responsibility to the husband anymore? No. So he says that the Sefer Ezra is a pivotal turning point in Jewish history. And we are still with that. We've still never regained the glories of David HaMelech and Shlomo HaMelech. Even after the Second Temple was built. The Second Temple was lacking 5 of the great things that existed in the First Temple. So in many ways, the lessons of Ezra and the Sefer Ezra still resonate with us. He says, man craves for certainty. Even bad news doesn't seem quite so tragic if we understand it as part of a meaningful pattern. The Torah and Talmud tell us that good is rewarded and evil is punished. And yet every day we see tzaddikim suffer and we see Rishaim do very good. So Why does this happen? So it has to do with giving us reward. If we would see lightning strike anyone who sins, so only foolish people would sin. So schar v'onesh has to do with our emunah. It's not with certainty. In the future, we will look back and see how many things that occurred bad to us was really to the good for us. Chazal say, "Kashem shemavarchim ala tov, kach mavarchin ala ra." Right? We say, but we don't do that anymore. We have a tova meitiv. When somebody gets an inheritance, you say a bracha tova meitiv, and someone loses a family member, you say a dayan emes. We don't have this unity. I'm going to ask you a question. Why do we cover our eyes when we say Kriya Shema? Because we have Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu. Hashem Yud Kei Vav Kei is Midas Harachamim, is merciful God. But Elokim is the Hashem who meets out din. So whether something good happens to us or bad happens to us, it's Hashem Echad. It's one. It's all good for us. But in today's world, we don't see that, so we cover our eyes. In the future, we won't. We will understand that everything that happens to us is good. And this is a period we just went through Sefer Esther, where the people didn't know, and the same thing in that Ezra had to reconstruct a Jewish society that had been ravaged by destruction and dispersion. Okay, does and we will I want to make sure that everyone recognizes that Ezra Sofer begins the period of Tor Sheba'al Peh. The original Tanoim, anybody after Ezra Sofer is a Tano. And without Ezra Sofer, we would not have Tor Sheba'al Peh, which basically guides Yiddishkeit.
Thank you, Ernie. Put a lot of work into it. Very good.
So we'll start next week. Like what we normally do, pasuk by pasuk. I may have a few more introductory statements to make, but pretty much we'll start learning the parak. Does anybody have any comments on?
Yeah, my mother always used to say, if I got it correctly, that the Jews were offered, like today, the Jews were offered to go back to Israel, but they didn't. A lot of them didn't go. So, like we have today, a galut. We could all could go live in Israel, but we don't. So. It was like similar to our days.
Yes, we'll have to learn why. Why is it that everyone didn't come up?
Right.
It could be the same thing. Could be economically they were very well. Maybe they were treated well at the time after Achashverosh. Remember, the Jews were on a high. So we'll have to see. We'll have to investigate that. Your mother was an expert in Bayis Sheni, so
Right.
that's the period of Ezra Sofer.
Yeah. By the way, Harold,
Yes.
I think you should make a new company, TheraBreath, for Talmidei Chachamim who eat shum on Erev Shabbos.
What about herring?
Garlic.
What about herring? Herring too?
Worse.
Yeah.
Garlic.
Thank you.
I'll see what I can do.
Product.
I think herring has a lot of garlic in it, right?
I don't know.
What?
I think herring has a lot of garlic.
Hurricanes garlic in it?
Onions.
Onions. That just
Onions.
doesn't have garlic.
Yeah.
No.
Galaretta has garlic.
If you thought that was helping you, Ernie, you got a problem.
A lot of rockets.
A huge amount of rockets, guys.
I know, a lot of rockets. I'm sitting
Still
here.
shooting rockets?
A huge amount.
Every time it's
Listen, if
found.
you think this is going to end quickly, I don't think it's going to.
No.
And
They're going to fight. They're going to fight.
And they attacking all these Arab countries around.
No, they just threw another, the palm that they threw that rocket, and now they hit another high rise in Dubai.
Oh my
I
God.
That's stupid. What's wrong with them?
Well, they're trying
Only
to
going to
build
galvanize.
a
It's only
wall.
going to
They're trying to
galvanize
make a regional
the
wall.
Arabs against.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Okay, we need a Gaisa Yeshua, as I said.
Yes.
All
Okay.
in their mamuds. Everybody's in their
Okay.
mamud. Oh, they're all here.
They've been there for 40. I know. I just got a text. They've been there for 45 minutes. My brother-in-law just said.
They're all sleeping in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
His son's in the army.
You only hear good news.
Yeah. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Dag Ernie.